10 memories you'll only understand if you grew up in 1950s Britain. Life in the 1950s. Britain was a world unlike today, slower, thriftier, and shaped by the shadow of war, but also filled with simple joys. Children grew up in a time when ration books still ruled the cupboard, coal fires glowed in draughty living rooms, and corner shops were the heart of every community. If you were lucky enough to grow up in the 1950s, your childhood was coloured with unique memories, ones that can't be replicated today. Here are 10 memories you'll only understand if you grew up in 1950s Britain. 10. The last of the ration books. For children in the 1950s, Britain, ration books were more than just paper. They were part of everyday life. Introduced during the Second World War, rationing lasted far longer than many remember. All food rationing didn't officially end until 4 July 1954, when meat was finally freed from restrictions. Sugar, another staple, remained rationed until September 1953, and sweets had only just returned in February of that same year. This meant that a visit to the sweet shop was a rare thrill. Glass jars full of sherbet lemons, pear drops, and licorice lined the shelves. But purchases were tiny, measured by coupons. A single chocolate bar was a once-in-a-while treat rather than an everyday snack. Families stretched their meals carefully, using every scrap. Interestingly, modern researchers have found that children who grew up under rationing often benefited in the long run. A 2024 study noted that those raised on lower sugar and fat diets had up to 35% lower risk of diabetes and significantly better heart health later in life. In other words, the ration books taught thrift, but they also, unknowingly, boosted health. 9. The trolley bus and steam trains. Transport in the 1950s. Britain had its own rhythm and music. In many towns, the trolley bus was a familiar sight, gliding along silently, except for the hum of its electric wires. Children gazed upward as the poles sparked against the overhead cables, while inside, the conductor clicked and punched tiny coloured tickets that seemed like souvenirs of every ride. Steam trains were another unforgettable presence. Before dieselisation took hold in the 1960s, railways still ran on the romance of coal. Holidays often began with families piling into compartments, luggage overhead, sandwiches wrapped in greaseproof paper. The hiss of steam and the chuff-chuff of engines echoed across countryside stations. Clothes carried home the smell of coal smoke and hot oil. These weren't just vehicles, they were experiences. For many who grew up in the 1950s, trains and trolley buses weren't just about getting from A to B. They were part of Britain's living soundtrack. 8. Black and white television magic. Television was still a novelty in 1950s Britain. When families first brought sets into their living rooms, they were treated like treasure. Neighbours would crowd in, chairs pulled tight, as tiny black and white screens flickered to life. One of the most iconic moments was the Queen's coronation in 1953. Around 20 million Britons watched the broadcast, many in homes that didn't even own a set, gathering instead at neighbours' or community halls. Bunting decorated the streets, and for children, watching this national event on a glowing little screen felt like magic. Programmes were few but memorable. Muffin the Mule danced across screens. The Grove family offered a glimpse of domestic drama, and variety shows kept whole households entertained. Switching off meant pulling the heavy knob with a loud click, leaving the screen to shrink into a glowing dot before fading away. In an age of streaming and endless channels, it's hard to explain the thrill of early TV. But for those growing up in the 1950s, every broadcast was an event. 7. The coal fire glow. Before central heating, families lived around the fire. Every evening began with a ritual: hauling coal from the shed, crumpling newspapers for kindling, and carefully coaxing flames to life. Children often crouched close, mesmerised by the crackling glow, while socks, gloves, or even damp shoes dried nearby. The fire was the heart of the home. In winter, parents roasted chestnuts or toasted crumpets on long forks, filling the room with warmth and aroma. But the rest of the house was cold. Bedrooms were icy, and bathrooms were often unheated. Families dashed upstairs at night, blankets piled high, sometimes with hot water bottles to fight the chill. Those draughty winters may sound uncomfortable now, but the coal fire created a coziness that modern central heating can't quite replicate. Its glow wasn't just heat, it was comfort, memory, and family togetherness. 6th Saturday morning cinema clubs. Ask anyone who was a child in 1950s Britain, and they'll smile at the mention of Saturday morning cinema clubs. The most famous was the ABC Miners Club, where for a few pennies, children packed into local cinemas for hours of adventure. The experience began with a sing-along, club members belting out songs while bouncing ball lyrics danced across the screen. Then came the cartoons, cowboy westerns, cliffhanger serials, and superheroes. The noise was deafening, cheering for the hero, booing the villain, laughter rolling down the aisles. Parents relished a quiet morning while children disappeared into these cinematic worlds. Friendships were forged in those darkened theatres. Sherbet dips and licorice were shared, and imaginations soared. The ABC Miners badge, proudly pinned to a jumper, was a badge of belonging. It was cheap, cheerful, and utterly unforgettable. A childhood ritual that defined a generation. 5. Milk at school. Few things are as iconic as the little glass bottles of milk handed out in schools. From 1946, all children in maintained schools were entitled to a free third of a pint of milk every day, thanks to post-war health initiatives. This continued throughout the 1950s. Children remember the bottles lined up in crates, often near the radiator. In winter, the milk was lukewarm and slightly creamy. In summer, it could turn too warm and less pleasant. Yet teachers insisted children drink it, stressing its value for strong bones and teeth. Some wrinkled their noses, while others gulped it down happily. The ritual of tearing off the foil cap, inserting the flimsy paper straw, and sipping during lessons is a vivid sensory memory for many. While later decades saw the scheme reduced, in the 1950s, it was an unshakable part of everyday childhood. 4. Clothes made to last. In the 1950s, Britain, clothing wasn't disposable. Hand-me-downs were the rule, not the exception. A sibling's trousers with patches at the knees became yours. Jumpers were darned at the elbows, socks endlessly mended, and shoes resoled again and again. Wardrobes smelled faintly of mothballs, protecting woolens from damage. Mothers were skilled seamstresses, often repairing clothes by lamplight. Children sometimes grumbled about itchy woolen scarves or hand-knitted jumpers, but the truth is, clothes were valued. Every stitch carried care. This culture of thrift wasn't just about saving money. It taught respect for what you owned. Those who grew up then often recall the feel of pressed wool trousers, polished shoes, and the pride of keeping garments looking smart despite their age. It was a Britain where "make do and mend" was not just a slogan, it was a way of life. 3. The corner shop on every street. Before supermarkets rose to dominance, the corner shop was a lifeline. Stepping through its door meant stepping into a world of smells. Ground coffee, bacon cut on heavy slicers, paraffin oil, and sweets in glass jars. Shopkeepers knew every family by name. Sugar was weighed into blue paper bags, butter patted into blocks, and cheese cut with a taut wire. Children were sent on errands, clutching a coin and a shopping list. For a penny, they might come back with a twist of paper filled with sherbet or humbugs. The corner shop wasn't just a business, it was community. Neighbours chatted, shopkeepers extended credit until payday, and kindness flowed as easily as conversation. Growing up in the 1950s, Britain meant knowing your shopkeeper as well as your teacher, and those little shops are remembered today with deep affection. Second, games in the street. With fewer cars on the roads, the streets belonged to children. Football was played with scuffed balls, hopscotch grids were chalked onto pavements, and skipping ropes tapped out rhythms. Tin can races, marbles, conkers, and endless games of tag filled the afternoons. The unwritten rule was simple. You could play until the streetlights flickered on. Then it was time to run home for tea. Parents didn't hover or worry the way they do today. Children had freedom, imagination, and resilience shaped by endless hours outdoors. These games created more than fun. They built community. Neighbours watched out for each other's children, and whole streets seemed to come alive with laughter. For many, these carefree evenings are among the brightest memories of life in 1950s Britain. 1. The wireless and family sing-songs. Before television fully took over, the wireless, radio, was the centre of family life. Evenings were spent listening together. Comedy shows like The Goon Show, thrilling dramas like Journey into Space, or dance band music filling the room. Unlike today's solitary earphones, radio was shared, a collective experience. But perhaps the most nostalgic memory of all comes from family sing-songs. At Christmas or gatherings, someone would sit at the piano or strum an accordion, and voices would join in. Songs like Roll Out the Barrel or We'll Meet Again echoed through living rooms. This wasn't just entertainment, it was togetherness. It was laughter, music, and shared joy before screens dominated daily life. For those who grew up in the 1950s, the memory of voices lifted in song remains one of the most powerful reminders of a bygone Britain. Life in 1950s Britain may feel like another world today, but for those who lived it, the memories remain timeless. Ration books, coal fires, corner shops, and games in the street. These moments shaped a generation, proving that happiness often came not from plenty, but from simplicity and community. Thank you for watching this video. Please don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell.